Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. I'm currently out in Ottawa planning on helping Conservative Party candidate Barbara Ball defeat Mark Carney in the riding of Nepean. And speaking of Mark Carney, he has completely ceded the ability to ever criticize Conservatives for anything because it doesn't matter how often he or a Liberal candidate or a Liberal staffer is caught doing something wrong. He will justify it as not that bad and refuse to fire them until it's far too late. This just happened in the last 24 hours when a CBC report came out showing two Liberal political operatives who have been confirmed to be on the main Liberal campaign were planting MAGA style buttons at a Conservative conference, basically as a false flag operation to try and see if they could get Conservatives to wear them so they could claim that Conservatives believe in radical politics, they're going to deny the election results, or there is a lot more infighting than like reality would have you believe. These are not the only two buttons that I'm showing you right here. This is just a graphic from the front of the article. There were many they were putting out, like Danielle Smith for leader in 2026 and stuff like that, or other sorts of things about like banning the Liberal Party or locking up Justin Trudeau. They never actually obviously got any Conservatives to wear this ridiculous crap, but this was what the Liberals assumed they could use to smear the Conservatives. And in response to this scandal break, because this is absolutely a scandal, Mark Carney is refusing to fire anyone. And in fact, people have just been reassigned. No punishments. The only problem was they got caught effectively in Mark Carney's mind.
Members of the Liberal War Room, so the Central Campaign, distributed Stop the Steal buttons at a Conservative event. Given the anti-democratic implications of this phrase, how much does this event undermine the trust in the way that the Liberals operate? And what have you done in response to these revelations?
Thanks for the question. Look, this is totally unacceptable, to be absolutely clear. And I, on behalf of my campaign, I was unaware of this behavior, but on behalf of my campaign, I apologize for it unreservedly. Okay. I've made it absolutely clear to my campaign that this behavior or anything approximating it or in that spirit is unacceptable, cannot happen again.
Is it unacceptable when Paul Chang called for Joe Tay to be locked up by the Chinese government for $1 million bounty? That was not considered a fireable offense. In fact, quietly, Paul Chang just said, I'm just choosing not to run again because Mark Carney, after a full day of defending the man, didn't have the guts to actually tell Paul Chang to leave himself because he was in too deep defending him. Also, I have to get to another quote. By the way, too, the funny thing is that he's acting like this is totally unacceptable and this is not something that the campaign would ever condone. The problem here is that the article that the CBC released got a quote from the Liberals who justified it that Liberal people, like the Liberal people, had just gotten carried away. Here's some what the other buttons look like if you want to see them. But they said that certain people on the campaign just got carried away. And that was very interesting language because it sounds like there is a mandate to go out there and smear Conservatives, find ways of attaching them to radical extreme politics or MAGA. And it's just that these guys, did it a little bit too much. Really, again, the problem was that they got caught. So this is some of the other buttons that they had posted or put around the Canada Strong and Free conference, trying to bait people into wearing them. Again, the funniest one to me is this Jenny Byrne, Corey Tenike one, as if any conservative, especially an ideological conservative, really cares about any of those people and I guess who's campaign director between the two of them. So I just wanted to pull up this thing that Stephen Chase has. This was not caught on video, or at least a video I have available. And Stephen Chase says, Liberal leader Mark Carney apologizes for campaign staff distributing fake buttons featuring Trump-style language at Ottawa Conservative Conference. The responsible people have been reassigned within the campaign. Not fired? So this is totally unacceptable and beyond the pale. But it's not a fireable offense. They didn't get demoted even. They're just reassigned. Reassigned to what? What could you trust those people to do? Which again proves that you probably couldn't fire them because this was something that was completely above board to do. And they could probably have proved that the Liberal Party told them to do this or approved of them doing this. And so firing them would probably be some sort of breach of contract since they had been approved or told to go do this. They did it. Now they're in trouble for doing said thing. Mark Carney, in a lot of ways, not to bring up American politics into this because the whole point of the story is that the Liberals are trying to Americanize Canadian politics, is that this reminds me so much of Joe Biden. It reminds me of his inability to get rid of anyone for anything. Failures, corruption, just refuse to get rid of any staff. You gotta ask anyone who is planning on voting Liberal why you trust this guy to turn the country around if he can't even fire derelict campaign staff and operatives. He cannot tell Paul Chang to leave. He cannot disclose his own investments. He just basically keeps dodging. Today, I think he says, oh, I actually don't have investments at all. I have everything in cash. Sure you do. Sure, that's why he couldn't disclose his conflicts of interest and that he had said he did his due diligence. And 2.5 weeks since he last said that, now suddenly it's all in cash and molasses or something like that. The man has no ability for accountability. How is he going to fix a country when he can't say, I was wrong? That person on my team was wrong. It's always that, well, I wouldn't agree with doing that, but, you know, they've been moved from this side of the campaign to that side of the campaign now, so it's all hunky-dory. No. One of Justin Trudeau's biggest flaws was the sheer amount of corruption in his government that he would never deal with. Anyone pretending that Mark Carney would be anything different is delusional. He was there for 5 years while Justin Trudeau was doing corrupt things as his economic advisor. He never called it out then. And now he's showing that he wasn't just silent about it back then because he wasn't in charge and it's not his authority to do anything. Then he didn't want to stand up and lose his job. Even when he's the man in charge, he is the prime minister and he won't do it. By the way, isn't he still in Ottawa pretending that he has any prime ministerial work to do? It's absolutely ridiculous that this guy cannot kick it on the campaign trail for more than a few days before having to go take a nap in Ottawa, really just to try and avoid all the bad press out there. This is why the polls are starting to turn around. In fact, I just saw an Angus Reid poll where the Conservatives are only trailing the Liberals by 5 points. I know that doesn't sound good, but considering that Angus Reid has been a pollster in this election cycle that has had the Conservatives at some points down 10 or 12 points, that's a major improvement. I just like to even point to any poll, even if it's a bad poll. If it shows a momentum shift in favor of the Conservatives, that is telling about the direction of the election. And we know it's not an election where the Liberals are leading by 5. Go around your own suburban neighborhoods. Areas where the Liberals are supposedly safe, there are a lot of Conservative signs. And it does represent something real. The Conservatives are going to turn out hard in this election. In fact, in that same Angus Reid poll, it showed 79% now of Conservative voters are definitely going to show up and vote Conservative. Right now, for the Liberals, only 63% of them say that they are definitely going to show up, and their choice is very clear to them at this point. At the debate, in a few days, there are a lot of votes that can be won by Poilievre, and what he has to do is keep proving that Carney was there for all the trouble that Trudeau was causing. He said nothing and, in fact, advised him to keep doing it, and now he's pretending that he's a reformer, and then what Poilievre needs to do is then point out every time that he proposes a policy, somehow it's bad. It's not good enough. It's somehow unconstitutional, just like his proposal to basically put criminals in prison that the courts are maybe potentially going to try and challenge because it's now against the charter to actually lock people up. This isn't even about what I was going to cover. I just need to bring this up because it drove me up the wall so much. Here is a guy very snidely, I'm not even sure what this emotion is he's trying to portray, very smug. He's going to smugly talk about why Poilievre's 3-strike rule to lock up violent repeat offenders for long periods of time is bad.
Poilievre's 3 strikes platform is terrible failed justice policy. It's already failed in the United States. There are thousands of journal articles and studies that will tell you the same thing.
No, honestly, mass incarceration of criminals, obviously not people who didn't commit a crime, Mass incarceration of criminals, repeat offenders, violent offenders, actually caused crime to absolutely bottom out during the early 2000s and the 2010s. That was when that policy was perfected, and we had the lowest crime rates pretty much in history.
First of all, a criminal actor is not engaged in some sort of rational cost-benefit analysis to deter them from crime before they commit it. They're not like, if I do this, they are people under duress trying to survive. You would...
Oh my goodness, this stupid talking point. All criminals are Aladdin. All criminals are just trying to steal that television to go feed their hungry kids. No, they are not. Criminals are rational actors, which is why when you make it easier to commit certain crimes, the amount of people committing those crimes goes way up. When we stop enforcing shoplifting laws, when we stop enforcing, we stop actually locking up repeat retail thieves, we get a lot more retail theft. That is one of the crimes that has been skyrocketing over the past 10 years is retail theft.
Do better to try and solve the underlying issue that's compelling them to commit the crime in the first place. I don't know, drug addiction, probably, socioeconomic struggles, etc. Second of all, mandatory minimums and 3 strikes laws are notorious for sweeping people up into the justice system and disproportionately affecting Black, Brown, and Indigenous people.
Are they committing the crime? If they are, then they should, do the time. It literally doesn't matter what you look like. If you're committing a criminal offense, you should be locked up. In fact, this is the racism of low expectations. To think that, well, we can't lock up somebody because they're Indigenous, because that would be a crime against the Indigenous community. How racist is it to basically imply that a criminal on an Indigenous reserve is like a pillar of the community, and if we lock him up, everyone's going to be sad or lose hope? No, what you're in fact going to do is make it easier for other people to actually run their businesses, be able to actually get a job in the area, because there is not a criminal element driving down the economic prospects of everyone. Because in fact, and this is my research paper that I did for my master's, it is poverty, it's crime that drives poverty, not poverty that drives crime. Any area that has a lot of crime, you'll see all the businesses shut down. It's not like people in that area of town don't need to eat. It's just not worth it.
The research tells you that. And lastly, this is inevitably going to lead to privatization of prison complexes because we're going to need more detention spaces. So the private prison contractors are licking their chops right now, and private prisons are no...
Okay, who cares? Who cares? Does someone need to be locked up? I don't care if they go into a public or private. I don't care if it's a co-op run by hipsters, as long as you're locking up the criminals.
Notorious for human rights offenses and trying to cut costs to maximize profits. This is a mess.
It's honestly not one of those things that's been widely proven that private prisons are worse than public institutions, because the private prisons tend to use their money more efficiently. That's the only difference. People will look at it and be like, this private prison per prisoner is spending so much less than the public institution. It's like, yeah, because it's a business who knows how to actually use their money effectively. So they're still providing the 3 square meals a day and all that stuff. They just do it without wasting all their money because they're not the government. Oh, my goodness. I hate the left on crime. They have no clue what they're talking about. But anyways, that should be it for me today, guys. I'm going to be over at Barbara Ball's office tomorrow. I'm just dropping by, going to be doing some door knocking. I'm not sure if they want me to lead a team for them or whatnot. I'm just kind of showing up to do as much as I possibly can, because I would love to see Mark Carney not win his seat in this election. So I'm going to be hitting as many doors, doing some persuasion door knocking to get people to maybe switch their vote towards conservatives. This is, in fact, actually a very winnable riding. In fact, the former Liberal MP for this riding, Chandra Arya, without saying it, effectively endorsed Barbara Ball, saying that, things haven't been going super well in the last 10 years, and I think that we need fresh people in government. And he wasn't talking about Mark Carney. Anyway, so that's it for me today, guys. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, do all that great stuff. I'll see you guys later.